Hello, welcome to part 2 of making a V-42 combat knife. So in the previous video I forged out the sanmai billet of steel, and now I'm going to be cutting it to shape on my bandsaw. Alright, so I cut the rough shape out on the bandsaw, and I'm taking it over to the grinder, and I'm going to grind it down to its final shape, and then I'm going to flatten it up and start beveling it. Alright, so here we are. I've finished up the profile of the dagger, and now what I'm going to do is run it like that on the belt, start cleaning up the flat sides so that I can get to beveling it. Alright, so I've ground the sides clean, and I etched it quickly, just so that I can see the high carbon steel running up the center, because I'm going to start grinding the bevels, and I want to make sure that once I've ground them, that all the steel along the edge is high carbon steel. So I'm going to take off my tool rest, and I'll start grinding the bevels. Now I'm going to do them freehand, which usually I use a jig, and this time I'm not gonna, so might work out, it might not, but hopefully I'll have something that looks halfway decent. So now I have finished grinding the bevels on this side. This side is still flat. So I'm going to turn off the camera and grind these bevels without filming, because it's basically going to be the same process as on here. Alright, so here we are. I have ground all the bevels and I started polishing them with sandpaper a little bit, and now I'm going to put it back in the forge, bring it up to critical temperature, and quench it in warm oil to harden it. Alright, so now I've taken the blade and I've polished it up a little bit just so that I can see the clean metal. And because we hardened it, it is so hard now, it's like glass. If I were to drop this, it would probably shatter. So it wouldn't make a great tool at this point. So what I have to do is temper it, meaning I'm going to heat it back up until the oxidation colors start to show. And what I'm hoping to get is a kind of a straw goldish color over the entire knife. And if it starts turning blue in the middle, that's not a huge problem. And then once I get to that color, I'm going to dunk it in this bucket of water. So here we go. Now I want to try to start on the thickest parts because they're going to soak up the most heat, take the longest to heat up, and I want to try to stay away from the thin spots so I don't overheat anything. Because if I overheat it and temper it too much, it won't hold an edge. Alright, so there we go. Now, so there you can see that color over the entire blade. So now I'm going to start polishing it by hand, going up in the grits, starting with a medium grit, a 120. So let's get started. So here's the blade now that I have polished all the bevels and the flat surfaces. And I just cleaned it off with acetone, and now I'm going to put it in my ferric chloride and etch it. And in here I have a mixture of warm water and baking soda to neutralize the ferric chloride when I'm done etching, so that it doesn't continue to rust the blade after it's done. What I'm going to do is leave it in here for about 5 minutes, and then I'm going to rub down the sides with 600 grit sandpaper to take off the oxides that are formed during the etching process, so that I get a deeper and more unified etch throughout the entire piece. So I'll bring you back in a few minutes. Alright, it's been about 5 minutes of the knife in the ferric chloride, and it's starting to have the pattern of the wrought iron, but the high carbon steel on the edge isn't showing up great yet. So I'm going to scrape off the oxides with the fine sandpaper. And put it back into etch for another 5 minutes. Okay. So it's etched for a little bit, and I'm just going to keep on putting it in the ferric chloride and rubbing it with the sandpaper. I'm probably going to do that 4 or 5 more times, just so I get a really deep etch. And yeah, it's starting to look really cool. At the end of this video I'm going to add some still photos of it, so you can get a really close look on what the how the pattern looks. It's starting to kind of look like I don't know, like snake skin almost over the wrought iron parts. So yeah, I'm just gonna keep this up, and I'll upload the pictures.